Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hi, testing. It's Sean O'Shea from The Good Dog.
Duh. Ooh, this is kind of cool.
Hi.
We're on. Still taller than you.
I'm about to do a little Q&A Saturday for you guys. On the move. Well, some on the move, maybe some stationary. We're kind of making it up as we go. Some on the hood of a car if I don't watch what I'm doing. Yeah, it's supposed to be cold today. It's Halloween day, everybody. It's supposed to be cold, and it's not. It's anything but.
Look at those prong collars.
Hey everybody, it's Sean from The Good Dog, and I've got the lovely Laura Morgan, who's right here. Today's Q&A Saturday, and we're in NOLA, and we're on the move. We're gonna, I think, head to Jackson Square, and try and, dig out some nice little spot to do a Q&A for you guys from there, answer some questions, shake things up a little bit. Typically we do them either in our house, or at the loft, but we're gonna shake things up, do it outside, a little on location style. So,
First, I need to get a coffee.
look what I got. I got Laura's coffee. It's not even coffee. Coffee's code, right? It's always tea. Sarah Baker says, how do you go about introducing, are we going to stop? Sarah Baker says, how do you go about introducing a client dog to your pack? I try to follow Caesar's way and have had great success, but I'm wondering if there's a better approach. Thanks, owners of Baker's Acres Canine Training. Well, Sarah, let's keep walking. So, there's lots of ways to introduce dogs. Caesar tends to use typically more of a flooding approach where he's got a lot of dogs and he puts the new dog in with basically overwhelming numbers of the other dogs, so the new dog doesn't feel like there's one dog he can pick on, single out, and do battle with. So basically the dog's like, good Lord, there's a lot of dogs here. I might as well just keep things cool because I'm never going to win this fight. So that's part. I mean, obviously Caesar's got some more nuanced pieces of that, but that's kind of the overview. With us, we tend to do things a lot slower. I find a really easy way. I tend to find working slower works really nice for us, and because of that, we never have dog fights. I can't tell you the last time we had a dog fight. We never have to take dogs to the vets, any of that stuff. So it is Halloween after all, right? So we never have dog fights, and that's not saying anybody else is doing it right or wrong or anything else, but basically it's just the way we like to work. I like to be really safe. I definitely will push the envelope. I definitely will push dogs' boundaries and get them to work through challenges. But I think that there's a really nice, easy, slow way to do it. And so for us, I bring the dogs in. They don't do any interactions straight away. They start going on walks. And mainly what I'm doing is I'm focusing on getting the state of mind right with the dog straight away. I'm looking at getting the dog to be calm, get rid of stress, speaking of which, that's how not to introduce a dog.
They literally just introduced those two dogs on leash,
right?
Face to face. We watched it happen.
How not to do it, right? A lot of street kids around here with dogs, and most of the dogs are pretty cool, but every once in a while you get some bad stuff. Anyways, back to what I was saying. So I don't even focus, guys. Think about it this way. I don't even focus on dog socialization. Even if the dog's primary reason he's coming to us is for socialization issues or dog-to-dog issues, what I focus on is getting the dog's state of mind right. First and foremost, I don't even worry about the other dogs. I worry about the dog walking nicely on leash, being respectful through thresholds, being respectful in the crate, learning place command, duration work, how to be accountable and deferential to people to where he can be more relaxed. So first thing I do is I just do all the foundation work that you see me teach in all the different videos. And what happens is within a couple days, I've got a really, really relaxed dog, right? He's used to looking to me for direction. He's not just on impulse or autopilot where he's just reacting to whatever he wants to react, which is typically the way they come in. They come in stressed and on autopilot. That's how you get dog fights. So I get rid of autopilot, I get rid of stress, get the dog cool, Then I start having my dogs work around the dog. You know, the dog will be in place or doing basic commands in my house, and I'll have my dogs just wandering around. They might be in a down if the dog's really sensitive, so there's no movement, and then eventually I allow more movement. And then within a couple days, the dog doesn't care about my dogs. He's learned that, for one, he's not allowed to attack, and two, there's no reason to, because my dogs are cool. So I've done it in a nice, slow process where the dog feels really groovy, really comfortable, really easy, and safe with me. And then eventually he's out mingling with my dogs, and then I can actually bring more client dogs into it, and the dog is almost always perfect. It's very rare that I have to do any, let's go this way, any extra correcting. Sometimes I might, if a dog, you know, gets into a weird space with another client dog where he feels a little tense with, I might have to give a correction or a little bit of information, but typically it's pretty darn easy. So, Sarah, that's my answer. My answer is I don't go with, you know, like toss the dog in and let's socialize. I go foundation first. I calm the dog down. I get the dog to look to me for direction, and then I get the dog to slowly get used to other dogs being around him while he's working. He doesn't even realize he's socializing, but he is. And then, next thing you know, he's social and cool. That's how we do it at the Good Dog Placement. Do I need to be closer?
Probably as close as you can get.
Okay. Well, this is like being on a radio show. Okay, guys. So we're in Jackson Square here. It's beautiful. Halloween day. We've got a question from Ashley Smith. Ashley says, or her question is, what do you say to the positive-only trainers that say e-collars and prong collars teach fear and aggression? If the dog is outside on the street afraid of another dog or human and you fry him with the e-collar, I can see how that would increase aggression. You aren't doing anything to calm the dog down, but you've said before with Nino, you wouldn't just throw him into that situation. It has to be built up, so if you properly encourage and build up your handling and your dog skills, can this training really stifle creativity and make your dog a plain follower because they're afraid to do anything but follow your orders? All right, Ashley. So if you follow me and reading my posts, you know that I just kind of addressed this, at least a portion of this the other day, which is basically I'm a firm believer in the first thing you have to do is stop the behavior. So if I want to get Nino or any other dog to have different feelings about any trigger that they're uncomfortable with, first I have to stop it. There's no way for a dog to start processing more positive thoughts or feel more comfortable about something if they're in an intense emotional state, explosive, aggressive, anything like that. You can counter condition all you want. You're not going to get anywhere. So your first order of business is you have to block, stop, inhibit the behavior. Once you do that, you've got a gateway. So with a Nino or something like that, I mean, I go foundation first, right? So I'm always, just like I answered in question 1 to Sarah, I'm looking for get him calm, get him relaxed, get him good on the walk, get him good on thresholds and place and duration work and all that stuff. Get his mind right, get him looking to me for information before I start asking more of him and putting him in more high pressure situations.
Not to mention, did you mention, but just teaching at a really low level, making sure the dog knows fairly what you're asking long before you ever move to a corrective phase. So
Right. Go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, no, Laura's 100% right. So I'm trying to kind of grab this whole giant question. It's easy to miss like some of the details.
It's a really important one because I think a lot of people think e-collar training, and this
Just
is something, I have to explain to new clients is that if we just put an e-collar on a dog and went out and corrected them for doing behavior that we don't like, that's the worst thing in the world. Yeah. So you have to create a foundation. You have to tell them exactly at a low level.
Of understanding.
Yeah, you have to let them know. Right. Go ahead.
You like when I just keep jumping all over your answers? I'm sorry. I get so excited. I just can't hold myself back. So Laura's 100% right. So we start with the e-collar foundation at like barely perceptible levels. So we're working really, really soft levels, teaching dogs what the pressure means, how to turn the e-collar off, how to do the behaviors, all that stuff, long before we ever do anything that's of a higher level for a correction or anything like that. So that's how we start. So e-collar training is just like leash training. If you're doing it right, you start with soft pressure and guidance, and then once the dog knows the behavior, then you can hold the dog accountable at a higher level. So if you were to go out and you were to bomb a dog with an e-collar anytime there was a trigger, you're not really giving much information. You're going to create a stressed out dog, probably a shut down dog, and probably a dog that's going to be afraid to do anything because he doesn't even understand why he's being corrected. So once you do the foundation properly and appropriately, then the dog has much more a firmer grasp on why things are happening, and it's paired with a no or anything else that a verbal connection to what the behavior is, so the dog's very clear about what's going on. So first you have to create a foundation. Then you have to inhibit a behavior. You have to actually stop it before you can start to counter condition. Pure positive trainers, they want you to just work at, below threshold, which might mean like 3 football fields away, and try and, use food to try and work with an intense state of mind. And that's, for a lot of dogs that are intense, it's just, you're not going to get anywhere. So I don't really answer the pure positive trainers or anybody that's got an issue with it. I just do the work I do and let the work speak for itself. So we start soft, we start fair, we give the dog a lot of information, and then as we move through the process and trust and respect is built, we start holding the dog more accountable. If I see problems that need direct attention, as far as like even a higher level correction for an aggressive behavior, I'll absolutely do it to inhibit that behavior. And then once I've inhibited that behavior, I'm able to start creating some really nice foundation about how to feel different about that trigger, whether it's like with Nino, with dogs, or with people, which Nino has both. But for just any dog, whatever the trigger is, first you have to stop it, and then you can start to counter condition. You counter condition just by the dog experiencing new feelings that aren't high intensity, and then you can also add things like play, food, and praise to reinforce that. So hopefully that answers the question. But be real cautious about getting involved in conversations with people that aren't interested in a conversation. It's another point.
Right. Well, one thing I was just going to say about like those tools making behaviors worse, it's not a myth. I mean, there's definitely things that when you bring out tools like that hold dogs totally accountable for their behavior, you start to see different behaviors and more challenge come out from the dog. And I like to tell people that it's kind of like if you had me do basic addition problems my whole life, like 2 + 2, 2 + 3, and I could just do them constantly, like every single one, they'd be like, she's a math genius. But then you start giving me algebra and you're like, and then I am not a math genius anymore. And then it's like a bigger challenge for me.
Yeah. Are you?
It's not good.
Are you a math genius?
No, I'm really not.
We'll get onto that in the next Q&A Saturday.
But it's that thing that you add more challenge, which a lot of dogs aren't used to being held accountable for any behavior. But once you start to ask them to be more accountable, you'll see different behaviors come out. Brattiness, any sort of like protest. So that's it.
Yeah, I think you sometimes use the whack-a-mole analogy, you know. So you push against something in one spot and then something comes up in another spot. Dogs are trying to find ways to continue to do things that have become ingrained habits and behaviors and things like that. So sometimes you inhibit one thing, or you give them a better way to do something, and then you find that it's coming out somewhere else. But dogs are just trying to figure out how to work things, what program works, how do they achieve the most comfort, and your job is to navigate, negotiate, and create that for them. How do I really create the most comfort? For a dog like Nino, I corrected him I gave him good foundation as far as what I expected of him, what the collar meant, what the prong meant, what the rules were, and then I would correct him at any point where he would have a negative response to a trigger, and then I would reward him and counter condition him with food for having a calm, positive response to things. So that was kind of how we went about that. So yeah, I think before I just talk forever and never get to another question, I think we'll wrap up with that question right there, right? Okay, guys, so we got question number 3. Question number 3 is from Susan Schweitzer Balling. Okay, so she says, hi, Sean and friends. I have a dog tree e-collar set at 74, and once in a while he yips when being corrected. Do you think I have it set too high? My husband and I train differently, and he thinks the dog is being hurt. All right, Susan. So 74 is pretty darn high. I'm not sure what e-collar you're using from Dogtra. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of variables involved. But typically, if you're having to correct at 74, there's a lot of things I'd like you to look at. One is collar fit. If the collar is not snug enough, then you're not going to get accurate response from the collar, and you may have dog fur in between the probes and the skin, which will diminish the levels, which means that you have to be at a 74 to get him to feel it like a 30. But then sometimes he might move his neck, and then the fur goes out of the way, and then he gets good contact, and now it feels like a 74, and now he yips. So that's a real common issue. So collar fit not being snug enough, is a real problem. Making sure you've got the right probes on there, contact points, to make sure you're getting good contact. If you've got a long fur dog, there's some really great longer contact points out there. E-collar Technologies has a thick fur contact point that's really great for getting through those tough coats. So typically when I see somebody working that high and then having sporadic reactions where sometimes that's okay and sometimes it's not, it's almost always a collar fit or a contact point issue. So, or you're correcting the dog, you're just using the tool just for correcting and not foundation, and so which you could also be just correcting the dog in high intensity moments when there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, which causes vocalizations and things like that as well. So like we call it the scary movie syndrome, where someone touches you or startles you in a scary movie and you have a reaction like that. So it can be something like that. But my suspicion is that it's probably a collar fit or a contact point issue. So I'd take a look at both of those. It should be really snug. You should not be able to turn that collar around your dog's neck without, when you move it, it should look like, let me give a little demo, right? So here's the collar on my neck. It should move like this. It shouldn't move independent of the neck. The neck skin should move like that with it. So not so deep that it's impaling the dog, obviously, but the contact fit is such an important part of doing good e-collar work. And if you get that straight, maybe your husband will feel better about the way you guys are training, because you won't be getting the yipping and stuff like that. So,
however,
yep.
if the dog if everything's fit and everything like that, everything's good. If the dog gives a little yip, but is continuing the behavior, assuming you've fairly taught the dog what you're asking. So, if you're asking him to do something, you fairly taught him, and then you're correcting him and he yips but still does it. I mean, vocalizations are a normal part. It's not like a...
Yeah, it's not unheard of
yeah.
by any stretch.
So
you're always the voice of reason. You're the voice of reason. But that said, voice of reason, 74 is a pretty high level.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
if you're on an IQ, if you're on like a real soft like Dogtra IQ, and you've got a really intense dog who's really intense about like cats or something like that, that could be an exception. But typically, you should be working at lower levels if you've done good foundation work and you've got good contact and all that. So that's it. Okay, guys, so question 4 from Irene Pellegrino. Hi, Irene. Hi, Sean and Laura. This Chihuahua I'm fostering is great with me, but is very fearful / insecure with my grown son, daughter, and son-in-law, who all live in the house. He barks and growls at them when he's in his crate in my bedroom, and he snapped on my 8-year-old grandson as he was removing his leash from his harness in his crate after walking him. Suggestions on consequences without making him more fearful. I'm now seeing these behaviors that I was warned about. I've had him only 1 week, and he's been through neutering and dental work a couple of days ago. Thanks for all you do. Okay, Irene. So a couple things. Part of it might just yeah, sorry, just let me get my other leg up because it's falling asleep. Part of this might be that the dog is just needing a little more time to get comfortable. You might be really apprehensive around kids. Kids can be hard for a lot of dogs, especially small dogs. Maybe not so especially, but I would say that I would personally be wanting to correct, once again, like I've answered in some other questions, maybe a small Dogtra IQ or Educator Mini collar, just to interrupt and correct the growling stuff. And then I would work on some food protocols with that the only way this dog eats is from the hands of all these kids that he's uncomfortable with. So, and I'd be pretty tough love about that. So it wouldn't be like, well, he didn't want to eat today, and so we'll feed him anyways. He only eats from these kids' hands. So, and do that continuously, and you'll start to develop a pretty good association with these kids. With the Chihuahua, that good stuff really comes from them. But you might need to wait. It might take a few days for that leverage from the food drive to kick in to be important enough for the dog to want to make that step to taking it from them. So, and if you don't want to do the corrections, if you don't want to do the e-collar stuff, you can just work on the food stuff. But it may take you longer, and it may be harder if, once again, if the state of mind's in too intense of a space. Also, be highly aware and conscious of any interactions with dogs that are nervous inside a crate setting makes them far more stressed, far more pressured, and far more likely to bite. So that would be something that if you're going to take tools on or off with a nervous dog, better to take them on or off out of the crate, just to relieve some of that stress so he doesn't feel so trapped and stuck and uncomfortable. So.
And on that tip
Yep.
be clear that when you're doing the feeding, with the kids, it's not in the crate.
Yeah, right. So, and it's also got to be monitored by you. So kids aren't feeding a dog that's been snapping and weird on their own. It's got to be highly supervised, have a leash on the dog, and basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the dog to the point where hunger overrides his tension or nervousness, and he starts to want to take the food from the kids, and that will slowly start to create a new thing. But personally, I would block the growling and all that stuff, as long as the kids are being appropriate, and then move towards a food protocol of feeding only from those kids' hands.
If
So
you feel comfortable with that. So if that
Irene's pretty experienced too.
Great. There we go.
So she can probably get a handle on this. And
to
the
folks at home.
right, and to the folks at home. But the only other thing I'd suggest is sometimes dogs just need a little more time to chill out. Brand new dogs are stressed out, and sometimes they just need a little more time. Maybe kids are too much for that dog right now. So another approach could be that you don't let the kids handle the dog. You let him build up some slow comfort, just being around them while you work the dog and walk the dog and do all that stuff. And then he can slowly develop, just like I was saying in my dog socialization question, I think, which was the first one, is that instead of throwing them into the fire, you can also just move real slowly and let them just very slowly get comfortable with the surroundings of the children around them, and then maybe he'll naturally get to a comfortable space. There's a lot of different approaches you can take on that stuff. It's question number 5. This is from Artem, and I'm going to butcher it, buddy. I'm sorry.
No, I got it.
You got it?
Akmetsafine.
Nice. Artem Akmetsafine. I knew there's a reason we had you here. All right, so hello, Sean and Laura. Thanks for the answer. He got a question answered, I think, last week about 180s, and it helped a lot. He says, thanks, that was a huge tip. My question today is, can you tell us about impulse control? What is it? What is the purpose of impulse control? What kind of dogs especially need that type of training? What benefits of impulse control are? How to build up impulse control? What kind of exercises the trainer owner should do? Blah, 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 blah. So... okay, Artem. So good question. Impulse control is everything, right? So it's basically teaching the dog the skills, the tools that most dogs haven't learned, which is to think before they act, right? An impulse is something where a dog feels something, and then having no control of it is they just act on that impulse. So a lot of what dog training is just teaching dogs to practice a moment of restraint when they feel an impulse, and then you've patterned different responses to that impulse so they can make better choices with it. I hope that makes sense. So things like place command, right? Take a real simple thing like place command. So place command, dogs just want to wander off it. They want to go follow the owner around the house. They want to bark at the door. They want to go chase the other dog in the house, whatever it is. But that's teaching the dog impulse control if you do it right. It says you have to be in this mat. You have to be on this mat. And you can't leave no matter what. So even if somebody knocks at the door, the mailman comes, the dog's impulse is, I want to just go. I want to go check out that. I've been conditioned to bark at this. But because you've patterned it and you've corrected the dog for breaking, the dog now starts to develop impulse control, which is, boom, the mailman knocks at the door, or a guest knocks at the door, and the dog hears it, has the impulse to want to move towards it, but it's been conditioned and has practiced a new habit, which is, I'll just sit here and take it easy. So that's how you start to build impulse control. Now, the thing is to build impulse control everywhere. You build it on the walk by getting the dog to heel, not to pull to trees, not to pull to bushes, not to just pick things up off the ground. You teach impulse control at thresholds, where it's an exciting moment to run through the door, but you teach the dog to wait for permission to go through it. You teach impulse control with waiting for food. So you set the food down, but the dog's not allowed to have it until you give him permission. More impulse control, because the impulse is to grab the food. The impulse is to run through the threshold. The impulse is to pull on the leash. Same thing, impulse control with jumping up when excited. You correct that and teach a dog that that's not acceptable, and the dog then has to learn that when I'm excited, I have to practice impulse control. I have to practice that even though I'm excited and want to jump on this person, I'm going to make a different choice. So really, dog training is just a plethora of impulse control training. You're teaching it in all these different contexts, and the better you do it, the more kind of foundationally, the more comprehensive the dog gets it, and so the dog starts to operate from a much more relaxed, respectful, conscious, thinking position, rather than just a position of this happens and I move. And basically, that's what we see dogs come in all the time. and which here's the other part of this, is that the lack of impulse control creates a ton of stress, right? So the mailman comes by, the dog that barks, mom leaves the house or walks into another room. All of those moments, dogs that are conditioned to just react and on their impulse, they live on edge because what's that? And they go react to it. What's that? Mom left the room. I've got to follow her. Now I'm worried. Somebody's knocking on the door. I'm concerned. It creates a dog that's on edge and stressed out, and dogs that are on edge and stressed out make really bad choices. So by teaching impulse control, you're teaching a well-behaved dog, but more importantly, you're creating a more respectful, a more balanced, comfortable, relaxed dog. And hopefully that makes sense, because impulse control is the big kahuna. So if you look at my videos on my website of all the basic stuff, almost all of those things are teaching impulse control. Yes, they're built around obedience commands, but the obedience commands are just a smidge of the power of it. The real power is what it's doing state of mind-wise for the dog to create more impulse control, more relaxation, more calm, more comfort, and differing to a human. So hope that answers it for you. Thanks, buddy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got question number 6. Question number 6 is from Carla Clark Robinson. I have a mini schnauzer named Barney. He turned 1 in September, not neutered. I'm wondering if when taking him on walks, should I let him sniff along the ground and mark spots, or should I be making him walk right beside me? Also, he still tries to go after other dogs or birds, sometimes just a blowing leaf when walking. I tug the collar. Should I be saying no at the same time, or should the tug be enough? Right now, even with the prong collar, I usually have to tug pretty hard. He seems to be a stubborn little guy. He is, after all, Carla, a schnauzer. Anyways, moving on. All right, Carla. So, with the description you just gave us, your dog should absolutely, Barney should absolutely be walking in a tight heel, right? So he's not too young to start developing good manners and good habits and a polite state of mind, because otherwise you're just training the opposite, which is Barney to just be on autopilot, Barney to go after other dogs, birds, and things like that. So we're talking about impulse control in the question prior to this, and that's exactly what Barney needs, is impulse control on board, stat. So he, especially because he's doing all these naughty things. So if you would teach him how to walk in a structured heel right by your side, you'll relax him a lot more. You'll teach him some firm boundaries about what the walk entails. You can obviously, we do like a 90-10, so 90% of the walk is structured, 10% over the complete duration interspersed throughout the walk. You can give him a release command, you can, okay, break, go potty, whatever it is that you want, and let him do his thing. Let him sniff, let him pee, let him potty, but it doesn't need to be 5 minutes. He doesn't need all day to do this stuff. The structure, the impulse control, and the relationship training is far more important than the just kind of willy-nilly sniffing stuff. So I would say absolutely get him on board with the structured walk. Maybe we can connect our walk YouTube video for her. We can send a link. It'll be in the comments section, so it's easy to do. But the other thing is that if you're not doing a structured walk in totality, then when you do try and correct him, you probably are having to tug hard, because now you've got a guy who's been practicing over the duration of the walk to just do whatever the hell he wants. So now you've got to say no really loud, instead of saying no more quietly throughout the duration of the walk and creating a nice state of mind that's in the right gear. And then when you need to say no for birds or something like that, you probably don't have to correct as firm. If you do, it's okay. If Barney is one of those tough guys who needs a little more oomph in order for the communication to connect and have value, so be it. But to be fair to him, then you got to start foundation. I always advise, don't just go out and correct. So create the structured walk, go after thresholds, do some place command with him. We can connect, we can link videos for all 3 of those things. At least those are like the dog owner survival. I call it the dog owner survival guide. Do those 3 things and you should be in a better gear. But just remember that even though he's young, if you're training him right now, so you're basically training him to just kind of be on his own and engage in naughty habits, and that's going to be the dog that's going to be an adult with you. So much better to create the good stuff now, and don't feel worried or negative that, oh, if I give him all this structure, he's not getting to be a fulfilled puppy or any of this stuff. He's not a puppy anymore, really, but he's not going to be a fulfilled young dog. But that's not the case. It's much more fulfilling to be calm, relaxed, have guidance, and know how to move through the world than it is to be able to sniff and wander around everywhere, be stressed out and misbehave, and then know that that's going to just get worse as he moves, 2.5, 3 years old. All that stuff's just going to get nastier. So go after it now.
All right. Let's go
Straight to what?
question 7.
Question 7. You want to read it for me? All right.
We've been doing that before. I don't know why we didn't do it this time. I was feeling feeling useless.
Well, it's because we've got like gear here.
Yeah.
We're trying to rank.
I'm like, yeah. All right. Ryan Martin, question 7. Hey, Ryan.
Ryan is a regular.
He sure is.
He's an old school regular.
He's awesome.
But he's young. He's a young school, old school regular.
He's a young school regular.
Hey, Ryan.
All right. So, if a dog falls asleep while in a down or in place, will he remember he's still in command when he wakes up? If he simply can't remember he's in command after waking, would it be unfair to correct for breaking command? Also, does it defeat the point of duration work to have a dog in command if he is tired? Thanks.
Okay. So we actually get this question a lot from a lot of clients. So if a dog falls asleep, sorry, I'm bouncing the camera when I do that, don't I? Sorry about that, guys. If a dog falls asleep in place and then gets out of place, I'll usually, I mean, depending on the guy, 9 times out of 10, I'm just going to remind him to go back to place if they just forget. But if the dog is kind of a pushy guy and he pushes boundaries a lot, and this might sound weird, but if he pushes boundaries a lot, I'm just trying to think in my head how I'd go about it. Typically, we don't see it. Typically, we see dogs we put in place. If they fall asleep, they just stay there because we've done a ton of patterning with place. So I'm trying to think, we don't really see dogs like fall asleep and then wander away.
No.
But if they legitimately fell asleep and wandered away, I'd probably remind them to go back. If they were like narcoleptic and it was happening all the time, I'd probably correct them and say, like, even when you wake up, you still have to stay here until you get permission. It's a little bit of a feel thing, but like I said,
Depends on the dog, too.
yeah, depends on the dog, but we rarely see it. So, but you want to be fair. It's always a flavor thing, Ryan. For me, it's always the flavor of what's the intention. If the dog is just absolutely innocently, fell asleep and is wandering off, I'll probably help him out and just guide him back. If the dog's a real brat and I've been seeing the behavior a lot, then I'm probably going to correct for it. Is there any benefit to doing duration work if the dog just falls asleep? Was that the question?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Just goes to sleep? Yeah, well, I mean, there definitely is. But I would also be looking for duration work that's more challenging for the dog, right? So if he falls asleep, cool, but I'd be looking for spots that are harder for the dog to just like relax and fall asleep in. I would be also adding way more distractions. So if he's in place and he likes to fall asleep in the living room, put him in the bathroom. How does he do in there? Put him on the front porch. How does he do there? Put him in the backyard in a place, or a downstay under a tree, and then start bringing lots of distractions around him. Ride a skateboard around him. If he's on the, in the front yard, I don't know. I'll even do it in the house sometimes. Vacuum cleaner out, sweep around him, dance around him, go up and pet and say, "Hi, what's going on, buddy?" I mean, if he starts to get dozy, keep him awake. Go over and stimulate him a little bit. Don't tell him to break. Don't give him a command that confuses him. But make it challenging. Your job is to reinforce the commands. Some people think it's unfair to challenge the dog when he's in place, but absolutely not. Until you hear a release word or you hear a recall, your job is to stay there. So if I come over and I say, "Hey, buddy, what's going on?" and I pat your head and I dance around and act silly, it doesn't mean anything. You should stay right there. So did I cover it all? Okay. Yeah. So go with that, Ryan.
All right, question 8. Sarah Brands. So Sarah's asking a question that we answered a couple times in our last week, so we're just going to go over quickly here, and then Sarah, if you want to look, last week's Q&A Saturday, we addressed this question as well, but it's good to bring it up again. Obviously a lot
of people struggle.
Yeah, they definitely do. Jumping up on people when they come in the house. I have one dog, a female lab mix, 3 years old, who does it consistently despite trying several things to stop it. We've turned our backs, ignored her, walked back out, reward if she isn't jumping, even for a second, and none of it works. Granted, I've tried to teach her place, but it doesn't help if I'm walking through the door and no one is telling her place. I've also been told to appreciate that she is happy to see me, but I just won't tolerate this behavior as it's unnecessary and creates chaos in my pack. She does have some possessiveness, jealousy issues around me with the male 8-year-old golden in my pack, so not sure if that's an issue.
Whew, I thought we were just jumping, but that's a whole lot of stuff. I got some music going on. I think we actually have a funeral over here, don't we? Yeah, I think sorry, a jazz funeral going on right now. We're right by the St. Louis Cathedral Church. So hopefully you can hear me okay. So don't turn your back, Amanda.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm singing a song to you. Don't turn your back, Amanda. Don't turn your back.
It's Sarah.
Sarah Brandt. Sorry, don't turn your back either, Sarah. So, Sarah, a lot of people teach you to turn the back, or you're going to make your dog upset, or you're going to hurt his feelings, something like that. No, it's just best to get rid of this behavior. Jumping up is a dangerous behavior. It's bad for your relationship. It's bad for the dog with other people. So let's just get rid of it. Like Laura said in the other posts, we cover it in the other videos, but I'll put a prong collar or an e-collar on the dog, and make sure they know what both those tools mean prior. And then I'll set up the situation where the jump happens, and I'll correct it firmly and get it done. Should be done in 1 or 2 sessions. This is not something to be worked on over and over and over again. If you are, it means you're either using the wrong tool or you're not using corrections that are firm enough for the dog to actually care about. So go and check out the other Q&A Saturdays. Both of them have jumping up questions, and they'll address that stuff. As far as the other stuff going on in your house with the tension between the dogs, you need to get more foundation on board, more leadership. Dogs that are allowed to jump up on people are not respectful dogs. So that's an indicator for me that it's symptomatic of other stuff going on in your house. So you really need to tighten things up. If you don't, your dogs will. So let's lay down the law. Let's get some firm rules for all the dogs in your house. Structured walk, thresholds, place command. At least start there and be firm, and you should see some changes in that. Thanks. Question 9.
Belle Audebal. I have 3 males and 1 female Patterdale Terriers. The female won't allow the newest member of the pack to play with me. She has come close to fighting with him. I constantly correct her, but after a month, the behavior continues.
And this is from Belle Audebal?
Yeah.
Belle Audebal. Okay, so you've got some snotty pants stuff going on. It's great that you're correcting the female who's disallowing you to play with another dog. Who's your female to be setting boundaries in your house for what's acceptable and who can play with who? Not a good sign. I would start looking for more rules for that female in general. I would teach a nice firm place command for that female. And I would then play with my dog, and if that dog breaks place, I'm going to correct firmly for that stuff. The place command isn't just to address the playing so you don't have a problem. It's also to address the state of mind of this female that's feeling obviously pretty entitled, pretty empowered. I would start looking for lots of different places where you can lay down some firmer rules with the female and really try and balance out the pack. She should not be setting boundaries for anybody else. So I'd ask you, how do you walk that dog? Or how do you walk all your dogs, but especially that dog? Does that dog walk in an immaculate heel? Does that dog obey thresholds like nobody's business? Does that dog not come rushing in or out of a crate? Does that dog wait for food? Will that dog stay in place while you play with another dog or while you walk around the house with the other dogs? Does it have that kind of impulse control? Does it have that kind of respect built in? If not, it sounds like a lot of work, because it is, but that's what I'd be going after. And in the moments of correction, prong collar's probably not. I think she said she's using a prong, right? Prong collar's probably not giving you enough bang for your. I thought she said prong collar. Okay. Regardless, we do e-collar training for every dog just because it's the best way to go for communication, accountability, and also correcting for issues like this. So if you have your female e-collar trained, or even just the basics like recall, then you can correct for any kind of escalation. You know, the dog breaks off place, or the dog starts to get snotty with one of the other dogs. Let her have it. Knock it off. It's not for you to be dictating to me or anybody else in the house what the rules are. So a firm consequence will change that state of mind. Your job is to find a consequence she cares about. E-collars typically work better than anything else for that. But I'm also advocating for a wider program, a more comprehensive program than just correcting. So go back to the top of this answer and work through all that other stuff and ask yourself, how loose are the rules, how loose are the structure, how much you asking this dog that could be causing the dog to feel entitled to do this, and then shore that up, and then also go after correcting directly for the issue. That's a good answer. I like that one.
Look at that. Question 10.
Guys, are we already at the finish line?
We're there.
By the way, it is an immaculately beautiful day here in the French Quarter. So amazing. When we get done with you guys, we're going to go have some more fun, and maybe we can bike around the quarter today. What do you think?
We have sessions.
No, I'm happy about the sessions, but,
But look around. It's beautiful.
Right. We'll find a bike ride at some point. I'm sure we can squeeze one in.
Any
This is Jackson Square, by the way, guys. Andrew Jackson's hiding behind the tree over there. St. Louis Cathedral is over to that side. They just had yeah. They just had a funeral and jazz band, jazz parade band, just marched them away and taken the body to the graveyard. Pretty awesome. Not the funeral part, but the usual, amazing New Orleans rituals and routines. Anyways, so I'm going back to question 10 here. So this is kind of a complex one. Do you want to read it?
Of course. What else am I gonna do?
Stand here and look pretty and hold the camera.
Try to answer and get stepped on. All right.
Do you want me to read that?
No. Amanda Topa Lopez. Are you Norwegian?
The hugging kiss?
No. Stop.
Yeah.
All right. Amanda Topa. Hello, Sean. I am going to contact you soon to set up training. Awesome. We rescued this guy, Charlie, from a pit bull rescue and brought him here with me when I moved in with my now husband. It's been a year now and I'm still going through a lot of stress with the move, so I know Charlie's feeling that as well. His problem is muzzle punching. He has done it to 4 different people, including myself, 3 women, 1 man, and also growled and lunged at a few other people. 2 incidences happened in the last 2 weeks. Before, I thought it was just excitement and he was jumping up to greet people and just lacked the social skill, consistency, and leadership to know better. It has since seemed more of an aggressive behavior as he leaves people with bruised noses and bloody lips. They've been mostly silent incidences too, so I always feel caught off guard. I know this reflects on his leadership, so these situations have been embarrassing and emotional for me. I have done training with him and keep a fairly structured household. Can you tell me more about the muzzle punch and what Charlie's trying to do in those situations? If he wanted to bite them, I know he would have already, but either way he's making a bad decision. I need to know how to prevent this without isolating him, and ultimately how to be the leader he needs me to be. Thanks so much.
Whew. Amanda. Wow, Amanda. Let me just put my leg down because it's just falling asleep. That's some pretty serious stuff you've got there. So you should be able to set that on my leg. So I'm glad there's no bites. It's pretty serious stuff and stuff I'm not thrilled about. You mentioned that you're talking about, coming in to see us for some work. I'd recommend that. That'd be fantastic. It sounds like you've got a pretty serious situation when you've got a pit that's going up and bloodying lips and leaving bruises and things like that. So love to help you out with that. But in the interim, it's a pretty typical behavior of a stressed out dog, right? Dog with not enough direction. So people are coming into your house. Dogs can be really conflicted. You can get excitement, you can get nervousness, you can get anxiety. They can all transpire at the same time. And then the dog's just got a stew of emotions going on, doesn't really know what to do with it, and just kind of channels it in a negative way. It could be the muzzle punch, could be growling, could be running around circling people, things like that. So most important thing I would start with right now is just starting to create some structure in the house so your dog feels more safe and more comfortable. Your dog should not be interacting with people. People should not be looming over to say hi. He should not have the freedom to come up and get into people's faces. So there's a bunch of stuff that we really need to kind of tackle here. Dog, if you don't have the dog on an e-collar and you don't have the dog on leash and prong, then you need to at least get the dog on leash and prong straight away. You need to have some way to address your dog and create structure and foundation in the house. I would be going for like major lockdown with this dog because muzzle punching can turn into bites. So I would be looking for a really, really extremely solid place command that is absolutely non-negotiable. Leash and prong collar on, dog dragging it around the house. Anytime you're supervising, when you're not supervising, obviously take it off for safety. When you are, be practicing place command not just when people are around, but strengthening those muscles all the time when things are, here, let me get my leg up there, when things are more mild, so you can build the muscles and the mental muscles of good impulse control and foundation before the bombs are falling. So what we typically do, if a dog like yours came into us, we'd start with all this foundation, structured walk, thresholds, all the stuff you hear me rattle on and on about, crate, all being done in a very specific way, a way that requires tons of impulse control, tons of courteous, polite, patient behavior, and then we start building up from there. So structured walk, thresholds, crate, waiting for food, place command, and then we'd eventually go to e-collar work. And what we do with all of that foundation work is we remove that stress, we remove that anxiety, and we remove the excitement that's causing all these problems. Doesn't mean your dog, it's not like a doggy lobotomy, like the stuff is removed to where your dog doesn't have access to excitement or fun or anything like that. But now he has a new way to cope with situations that are troublesome or challenging or fear-inducing or anxiety-inducing or excitement-inducing. So right now your dog's flying blind. Your dog, even though you're trying to help him out, your dog is in effect trying to figure things out on his own. He's doing a really poor job. We see this over and over and over and over again. As soon as you give enough structure and you give enough rules and enough guidance and leadership, you'll see this stuff really start to dissipate. The challenge is, how do you go about doing it yourself, which is why dog trainers can be helpful, because what we do all the time. So it can be a lot easier for us to implement that, understand what tools are going to work best, and how to move your dog through the process. So if you want to work with us, awesome. If you want to get a jump on it yourself, go to my website and go to my do-it-yourself videos and watch them and recreate them in a very detailed, what's the word I'm looking for? Replicate them. Don't do like, well, he's on a prong and he's walking pretty nice. There's a reason that I advise all of the behaviors to be done a certain way, and that's because they challenge the dog at a much higher level, and they create much more state of mind transformation than a lot of other ways of doing it. So go through the walk, go through the threshold, go through the crate, go through the waiting for food, go through the place, go through sit and down. They're tolling the end of our Q&A Saturday. Basically create all that foundation, create a calm, quiet, relaxed dog that's learned to look to you for information, and do not let guests go up and approach, and do not let him approach guests. He's in place, people ignore him, and that's your beginning place. That's where you start to change the state of mind. That's where you start to get a dog that becomes safer. From there, we can move on to bigger challenges and more transformation. But right now, to create safety and create foundational shift, that's where you got to start. So I hope that makes sense. But the upshot is that dogs that are left to figure things out on their own are often highly stressed dogs, and they make bad choices, whether it's muzzle punching, barking, growling, biting, running around chasing people or circling them. All of it's the same stuff. So let's really focus on structure, rules, and locking your dog down temporarily so it can start to feel more comfortable. I think, Laura Morgan, that this is the end of Q&A Saturday.
I think so too.
In Jackson Square. Yep. We can't say how much we appreciate, or I can't say how much we appreciate your guys' questions.
We want more. We want more of them.
Yeah, we want more. It's so nice to be able to interact like this. I'm really enjoying the video format versus just typing. It's much more fun. It's much more personal, being able to give you a ton more detail and saving my thumbs from an early grave. So
I have a note, if I may.
Let's hear it. Let's go on. You may.
Are you going to finish my sentence? Okay. So sometimes there's questions in there that are a little bit more comprehensive. Like there's a question the second time this week from someone who says that they're having fighting dogs. That's a tougher one to answer in this sort of format or in any sort of format. That's a pretty big one. That's and it's hard to coach on that stuff. Typically with fighting dog situations or tougher stuff like that, we're just going to talk about foundation and making sure every dog in the pack is having the same sort of thing go on. But that's just so you guys know, the questions that are a little bit more comprehensive are tougher to answer in this format. So,
but at the same time, I'm not derailing your question. At the same time, we want detailed questions.
Of course.
We want smart, detailed, effort-rich questions. But there are some questions that can be tough to answer in a shorter format like that.
With less details.
Right.
Less details, like the question that I'm talking about. I forget her name, but there's not a lot of details beyond just their fighting. Right. So, I don't, if you want that question really, really answered, we need a little bit more.
All right, so if you do have a major situation like that, we'll attempt to answer it. But like Laura's saying, we just need more information to be able to give you any kind of accurate help with it. Otherwise, it's just too vague. I think she's talking about two German shepherds fighting for dominance, she says. And so So try us again, and this is not to give you a hard time. It's just we want to serve you at the highest level, and so it doesn't do us any good to kind of just poke around with information if we're not able to give you better stuff. So that's it, guys. Q&A Saturday is rocking and rolling. It's only going to get better. We're so happy to be able to do this from lovely New Orleans. It's so nice to have Laura Morgan here. Right?
Yes. Thanks.
She's pretending like she never gets to talk or she doesn't get to participate. Right. Anyways, so I'm gonna sign off for both of us, and we'll see you guys soon. All right, thanks, guys.